Diesel Dave, one of Heavy D's closest friends, and a major television personality from the Diesel Brothers show, built his image as a firebrand. He wasn't just recognized for his oversized monster trucks, but also for the wild stunts he pulled and the influence he carried through the Diesel Power Gear brand. Fans loved him for his humor and lightheartedness. But behind the fame and fun was a silent problem, something that had been noticed and even warned about several times, yet was repeatedly ignored. Life after the Diesel Brothers show, and the string of lawsuits that followed, revealed the consequences of ignoring those early warnings. While many fans stayed quiet, others began to speak up. The Diesel Brothers themselves eventually acknowledged the change. In 2023, through a release on the Spark Motors website, they confirmed their decision to bring the show to an end. They explained that they wanted to return to their roots, producing content independently, the same way they began. But that wasn't the end of their television journey. By June 2025, AutoGuide reported that the Diesel Brothers had launched a brand new project called Scrapyard Kings. This show introduced a fresh concept: teams competing against each other in do-it-yourself challenges using salvaged parts. Inspired by the old hit Junkyard Wars, the series had contestants split into 3 teams tasked with creating vehicles capable of completing challenges on land, in the air, and on water. Each team received a budget to buy a starter car, then scavenge junkyards for parts and scraps to improve their builds. The real work happened back at their home bases, where the teams pieced together their wild creations before putting them to the test. Episodes of Scrapyard Kings aired primarily on Heavy D's YouTube channel, which by then had grown to over 438,000 subscribers. The episodes typically dropped on Saturdays, and while the project was met with skepticism, it also sparked hope that the Diesel Brothers could reinvent themselves once again. For Diesel Dave, this new chapter was about proving that he and his partner could still entertain audiences while staying within the law. But despite the fresh start, the shadow of the past continued to loom. From the very beginning, Diesel Dave stood out from the duo not only for his passion for oversized trucks, but also for his magnetic personality. He quickly became the face of the brand, a man whose infectious laugh and playful humor made fans feel like part of the team. Yet beneath the charm was a man pushing the Diesel Brothers brand harder and faster than anyone expected. With that rapid growth came risks that would soon catch up to them. The first storm arrived in the form of an environmental lawsuit. Regulators argued that the trucks featured on the show weren't just outrageous builds meant for entertainment. They were outright illegal for public road use. Federal and state authorities pointed out modifications like rolling coal pipes and emissions deletions as serious violations of clean air laws, not just harmless fun. What made this case historic was that it marked the first time private individuals successfully sued television personalities for environmental harm. The lawsuit painted Diesel Dave and the entire Diesel Brothers crew as reckless and defiant against environmental regulations, especially since they had been given warnings long before the legal action was taken. This led to difficult questions. Did the Diesel Brothers fully understand the damage they were causing to the environment? Or was their decision to ignore the earlier warnings intentional, a gamble to protect their brand? For some fans, the lawsuit looked like government overreach, but the court viewed it differently, handing down heavy fines and putting the brothers under immense financial and legal pressure. What once seemed like fun truck builds that spewed heavy smoke no longer looked so harmless, as if the environmental lawsuit wasn't enough. The Diesel Brothers soon found themselves entangled in a trademark battle. The Italian fashion giant Diesel filed a lawsuit against Diesel Power Gear, accusing the Utah-based company of infringing on its well-known brand name. For Diesel, this wasn't just about reputation. It was about protecting decades of investment in a globally recognized trademark. To fans, however, it became a bigger question: had the Diesel Brothers crossed the line between being bold entertainers and outright brand infringers? The court sided with the fashion company, ruling that Diesel Power Gear had indeed infringed on the Diesel brand. The damages awarded were staggering, delivering a financial blow that even Diesel Dave's humor couldn't soften. One lawsuit might have been brushed off as a mistake, but facing 2 major legal battles in a row made fans question whether the brothers were truly careless or simply reckless in their decisions. Still, What endeared fans to Diesel Dave wasn't just his builds, it was his humanity. Away from the courtroom drama, he showed himself as a devoted husband and father. He leaned heavily on humor, not only to entertain fans, but also as a personal shield against stress. Even as he paid millions in fines, he maintained the persona of a man who loved his family, valued freedom, and refused to let life's toughest challenges crush his spirit. To many supporters, Diesel Dave was never a villain, but rather a reminder of rebellion, resilience, and the power of laughter in hard times. But the challenges didn't stop there. Diesel Power Gear, the clothing line tied to the Diesel brothers, was hit especially hard by the trademark case. In 2017, Diesel SP, the Italian fashion company, took them to court in New York for trademark infringement, arguing that the Diesel brothers' use of diesel created consumer confusion. They claimed people might mistakenly believe Diesel Power Gear was associated with or endorsed by Diesel SPA, a brand protected since the 1970s. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office had already sided with Diesel SPA, rejecting Diesel Power Gear's trademark applications. Despite these rulings, the Diesel brothers continued using the name, which the court later categorized as willful infringement. After years of litigation, Judge Jennifer Rochen ruled in October 2022 that Diesel Power Gear had indeed violated Diesel's trademark. While Diesel initially demanded nearly $59 million in damages, the total of Diesel Power Gear's net sales, the court eventually reduced the amount dramatically, ordering the company to pay $1.8 million in May 2023, even though it was far less than the original claim. It was still a heavy financial hit. The repeated lawsuits eroded the Diesel brothers' credibility, especially Diesel Dave's, who had built his image around family values and humor. To fans, he wasn't just a mechanic, he was a personality they trusted. But after being sued twice for actions that ignored early warnings and blurred legal boundaries, his reputation suffered. The aftermath of these lawsuits extended far beyond courtrooms. In March 2020, news outlets reported that the brothers had been fined over $851,000 for violating clean air laws. Environmental advocates pointed out that these modifications worsened air quality in Utah, a state already struggling with pollution. Organizations like Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment emphasized that these weren't isolated incidents, but a repeated pattern of harmful behavior. Though Discovery Channel didn't cancel the show outright, the controversy tainted the Diesel brothers' family-friendly image. Their once harmless jokes were now interpreted through a critical lens, and separating the entertainers from their legal troubles became harder for fans. Still, the brothers didn't disappear. They continued airing new episodes into 2022 and stayed active on social media. Showcasing stunts, builds, and giveaways, fans were split. Some saw the brothers as reckless influencers whose actions encouraged illegal modifications. Others defended them as victims of government overreach who were being punished for pushing boundaries. What seemed undeniable, however, was that their constant truck giveaways helped maintain fan loyalty through the storm. For Diesel Dave personally, the lawsuits left a mark. He became more private, focusing his social media on family life-sharing skits with his kids, pets, and lighthearted pranks. This was his way of softening the controversies and reminding fans of the man behind the brand, but all of it could have been avoided. The Diesel brothers had been warned as far back as July 27, 2016, when the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment issued a formal notice that their modifications violated federal environmental law. A follow-up warning came in October of the same year through a law firm, detailing additional violations of state environmental regulations. Yet, the warnings were brushed aside. Warnings that eventually grew into the full-blown legal battles that defined their careers. Key warnings that the Diesel brothers ignored eventually snowballed into something much larger than they had anticipated. What began as notices from environmental groups in 2016 turned into a defining moment for their brand. By refusing to take those early letters seriously, Diesel Dave and Heavy D not only fueled controversy, but also gave critics more ammunition. The Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment (UPHE) wasn't just another advocacy Group It was a team of doctors and scientists deeply concerned about public health. They believed the modifications glamorized on the show, particularly those that allowed trucks to release thick black smoke, were worsening Utah's already fragile air quality. Salt Lake City, where much of their audience lived, struggled with pollution levels that were among the worst in the nation during certain seasons. The group warned that the Diesel brothers' actions contributed to dangerous spikes in particulate matter and nitrogen oxides, pollutants directly linked to asthma, lung disease, and even heart problems. To them, this wasn't just about oversized trucks, it was about human lives. But instead of addressing these concerns, the Diesel brothers doubled down on their brand of entertainment by the time the case reached the courts. The narrative had shifted from harmless fun to reckless defiance. The lawsuits revealed that regulators and environmentalists had a long trail of evidence showing how the brothers ignored both state and federal law. When the ruling finally came down in 2020, ordering them to pay $851,000 in fines, it was more than just a financial penalty. It was a symbolic judgment or reminder that even celebrities weren't above the law. Yet, strangely enough, the Diesel brothers remained resilient. While most television personalities would have retreated under the weight of negative press, Diesel Dave and Heavy D kept going. Their show continued on Discovery, and their social media presence never wavered. In fact, their giveaways, builds, and stunts continued to draw huge engagement. This created a divide. Environmentalists saw them as dangerous role models, normalizing pollution, while loyal fans defended them as rebels standing up against government overreach. Then came the trademark battle with Diesel SPA, which further complicated matters. Fans who once defended the brothers against environmental claims now had a harder time ignoring the fact that they were also facing intellectual property disputes. The $1.8 million settlement might not have bankrupted them, but it sent a clear message. They weren't untouchable. The cracks in their carefully built image were beginning to show. For Diesel Dave personally, these cracks were deeply personal. His entire persona had been built on laughter, positivity, and the image of a family man. He was the kind of personality who made fans feel like friends, the guy who always had a joke to lighten the mood. But as the lawsuits mounted, even he couldn't laugh off the consequences forever. Fans began to notice a subtle shift in his behavior. His social media posts leaned more heavily into family life videos with his children, playful moments with pets, and harmless pranks that reminded audiences of the man behind the trucks. This was no accident. It was a deliberate move to show a softer side of himself, to keep fans connected, even while the controversies threatened to overshadow everything else. Humor, which had always been his tool for entertainment, now became his shield for survival. But one truth remained constant. The warnings had always been there. From environmental groups to trademark lawyers, people had cautioned the Diesel brothers that their path was risky, even unsustainable. Yet the brothers chose to push boundaries, building an empire on defiance and spectacle. For some fans, that was exactly why they loved them, because Diesel Dave and Heavy D symbolized freedom, rebellion, and the joy of living outside the rules. For others, though, it was proof that the brand had become reckless. Ignoring the responsibilities that came with their massive influence, the Diesel brothers' story became more than just one about trucks. It was a story about how fame, ambition, and risk-taking collided with law, responsibility, and accountability. It was also about how much audiences are willing to forgive, and where they finally draw the line, even now. With Scrapyard Kings bringing a fresh chapter to their careers, the shadow of those lawsuits lingers. Some fans cheer for their comeback, hopeful that lessons have been learned. Others remain skeptical, questioning whether the brothers will ever truly change their approach. For Diesel Dave, the balancing act continues between entertainer and businessman, between rebel and family man, between humor and hard reality. Some of the main concerns, which were clearly voiced in the letter against the Diesel brothers, centered around very serious environmental violations. These concerns included the constant removal and deactivation of pollution control devices from diesel trucks. They were also accused of installing and selling what were known as defeat devices, which were components deliberately engineered to bypass or trick emission systems. On top of this, the brothers were modifying and selling vehicles that no longer met the strict emissions requirements set by law. Despite repeated warnings about these actions, the Diesel brothers continued as if nothing had happened. Rather than slowing down, they actually began pushing bolder innovations than before and proudly broadcasted them as though everything was perfectly normal. Their consistent disregard for these warnings eventually forced the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment (UPHE) to take drastic measures. On January 10, 2017, they filed a citizen lawsuit under the Clean Air Act. This lawsuit directly targeted the Diesel Brothers team, which included David Sparks, better known as Heavy D, Dave Dees, Dave Kiley, Caton, the Muscle Hopkins, and Josh Weirdbeard Stewart. Along with their affiliated businesses, the complaint also highlighted that more than 60 days had passed since the Diesel brothers were notified of their violations, yet they had completely ignored it and continued their illegal modifications in their defense. The Diesel brothers claimed that their builds were designed solely for off-road or competition use, arguing that this made them exempt from certain emission standards. But E came well prepared with evidence. They countered that many of these modified trucks were actually being used on public roads, directly contributing to pollution in Utah's Wasatch Front region. While the Diesel brothers were not the only group or business sued by UPHE, their case drew the most attention. The reason was simple. They were media personalities, beloved by fans, and their involvement made the lawsuit a high-profile story. The case dragged on for several years, with both sides bringing in expert witnesses to strengthen their arguments. Hoopa, however, had an extra weapon: the Diesel brothers' own social media presence. They presented posts and videos where the brothers openly showed themselves tampering with emission systems on trucks, that were clearly driven on public streets. This became a key turning point. During this difficult period, Diesel Dave's partner and close friend, Heavy D, took to Instagram to speak about how the lawsuit was affecting their business. In one emotional post, he wrote, "A federal judge stopped our massive garage sales. But justice prevailed, and we're back in business. We're selling everything. It's the end of an era and the beginning of a brand new one for me. And that means I have to let go of all the stuff I have been hoarding over the past decade. Eventually." In March 2020, United States District Judge Robert Shelby delivered a ruling against the Diesel brothers. The court found that they had indeed violated the Clean Air Act and state laws by tampering with or completely removing emissions controls without putting in the required pollution control measures. It was also confirmed that this had happened with at least 31 diesel trucks, just as the lawsuit claimed. This meant WHO had officially won the case, not only against the Diesel brothers, but also against other key corporate officers responsible for hundreds of similar violations of both the Clean Air Act and Utah's state plan. For UPHE, this wasn't just a legal victory. Their president, Brian Monge, described it as a major step toward clean, healthy air in Utah, according to him. The ruling was not only about one community, but also a strong message to every business. No entity is above the law. He described the outcome as a victory for public health, for the preservation of the rule of law, and for the rights of citizens to hold companies accountable when they jeopardize clean air. The ruling came with extremely stiff penalties. The Diesel Bros were ordered to pay over $848,000 in combined fines and legal fees. Out of this, $761,451 were directed toward federal civil fines, while another $90,000 went to Davis County to support local environmental remediation programs, including a tampered diesel truck restoration initiative. On top of the financial burden, a permanent injunction was imposed, barring them from ever removing pollution controls again or selling vehicles without the legally required systems. Judge Shelby described their behavior as flagrant misconduct, pointing out that a tampered diesel vehicle could emit up to 36 times more nitrogen oxides and 20 times more particulate matter than a legally compliant model. He also stressed that the Diesel brothers had directly benefited financially from these modifications, not only through profits, but also by boosting their television fame and brand reputation. He warned that if they ever violated pollution standards again, they risked being held in contempt of court. The verdict and fines hit the Diesel brothers hard, creating a massive financial setback. In response, they filed an appeal, but the ruling was upheld by a Salt Lake City judge. Later, in late 2021, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals issued its decision, again siding with the lower court. The court emphasized that UP had the full right to sue under the Clean Air Act's citizens enforcement provision, and that the punishment was proportional to what they described as blatant and repeated misconduct. The court also dismissed the Diesel brothers' claims that modifying or selling vehicles meant they were somehow exempt from liability. Despite these losses, the Diesel brothers remained determined. In 2024, they managed to secure a $225,000 reduction in their financial penalties. However, even with this small victory, their reputation had already been badly damaged. The lawsuit and its aftermath permanently altered the course of their diesel sellers' business and even influenced what they could show on television. Diesel Dave's rise to fame is an equally fascinating story, filled with twists of fate, deep passion, and a touch of humor that helped shape his public image. Born as David Kiley on June 17th, his exact birth year remains a subject of controversy. Some sources suggest that he entered the world in 1974, while others argue it was actually 1984. There's also disagreement about his birthplace. Certain accounts insist he was born on an Air Force base in Lubbock, Texas, while others maintain that his birthplace was Farmington. Interestingly, even the articles that suggest Texas as his birthplace also mention that his family relocated to Utah during his earliest years. Dave came from a strong military lineage, and that heritage played a defining role in shaping his values and ambitions. His great-grandfather had served during both the First and Second World Wars. His father, meanwhile, was in the Air Force and fought as a mortarman with the 99th Infantry during World War II. Dave himself tried to join the Army, but a persistent shoulder issue prevented him from fulfilling that dream. His younger brother, however, went on to serve in the Marines. Growing up surrounded by these examples, Dave often spoke about how witnessing their resilience and discipline firsthand gave him a profound respect for the military and the sacrifices that came with it. While his military ambitions were cut short, Dave's love for trucks filled that void. From a young age, he was passionate about vehicles and constantly looked for new ways to sharpen his skills in modifying and rebuilding them. Fate stepped in when he met Heavy D at a singles gathering hosted by the Mormon Church of the Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City, Utah. Both men were hoping to find life partners who shared their Mormon faith. Instead, they found something just as enduring and unlikely, but powerful friendship that would eventually grow into a lifelong business partnership and brotherhood. Bond between Diesel Dave and Heavy D solidified almost by accident. On one occasion, Heavy D mistakenly filled Diesel Dave's pickup truck with gasoline instead of diesel while they were heading to a lake with friends. The mishap forced them to work together, taking turns draining the gas out of the tank. During this unexpected teamwork, they began talking more deeply about their dreams, discovering that both shared a vision to one day open a diesel-focused auto shop that could handle everything from pickup trucks to SUVs and four-wheel drives. Their shared passion soon turned into action. While Diesel Dave excelled in sales, marketing, and connecting with people, Heavy D brought in his technical expertise. This perfect balance allowed them to launch not just one, but 3 businesses together. The first was Diesel Sellers. Founded in 2008, the online business specialized in custom truck builds, resales, and parts sales. With a focus on powerful performance trucks, equipped with extreme upgrades and unique eye-catching designs in the early days, Diesel Sellers mostly relied on word of mouth and small classified ads to attract customers. But Sparks, with his sharp business instinct, realized the true potential of social media. Soon, the team began posting behind-the-scenes videos of their builds, before and after, transformation pictures, and clips of their trucks in action. These posts exploded on platforms like YouTube and Facebook, drawing in millions of views. Their fame grew even more when they introduced truck giveaways, which became their signature promotional tool. The giveaways worked brilliantly. Fans could enter the contests by purchasing Diesel sellers branded merchandise or auto parts worth just $5 or more from their online store, elcsellers.com. Winners had the chance to take home fully customized diesel trucks, built with care by the Diesel brothers themselves. Not only did this create massive publicity, but it also gave fans a personal connection to the team's work, making their brand feel larger than life. This surge in popularity soon caught the attention of mainstream media. Jay Leno, host of The Tonight Show, invited them on after finding their videos both impressive and entertaining. That television appearance served as a breakthrough moment, opening more doors and expanding their fan base even further. Eventually, their growing visibility attracted the Discovery Channel, which scouted them for a reality show. Interestingly, it took 2 years before the Diesel brothers took the offer seriously, since at first they thought the phone calls were scams. Finally, on January 4, 2016, Diesel Brothers premiered on the Discovery Channel. The show, featuring Diesel Dave, Heavy D, and their close team members, the Muscle and Weird Beard, ran for 6 seasons. It showcased not just the team's mechanical creativity, but also their unique lifestyle, where every weld, paint job, and daring stunt reflected both hard work and passion. Unlike other reality shows, Diesel Brothers wasn't about polished glamour. It thrived on raw authenticity, grit, and genuine camaraderie. What made the series a hit was the perfect mix of thrilling truck builds, jaw-dropping stunts, unexpected mishaps like a truck fire, and generous giveaways that won them loyal fans. The humor and natural chemistry among the team members tied everything together. Even in stressful moments, there was little visible tension, only laughter, witty banter, and genuine brotherhood. Diesel Dave quickly became a standout star. His larger-than-life personality, charm, and ability to connect with people made him a fan favorite almost instantly. Heavy D, on the other hand, thrived as the strategist, using social media to expand their reach far beyond television. Together, they didn't just build trucks, they built a community, a culture, and even a movement where fans felt like they were part of something much bigger. But, as often happens, the same platforms that fueled their rise eventually brought criticism, scrutiny, and controversy. The spotlight magnified both their strengths and their flaws. While their golden years were filled with loyal fans and seemingly unstoppable growth, their later battles, including the lawsuits, would test not just their business, but their reputation, their brotherhood, and the dream they once built from scratch. Sometimes, people set out with the purest intentions, driven by passion and ambition. Yet the path they choose may not always align with the law. This was the story of Diesel Dave, a man who had successfully charmed his audience with humor, charisma, and a family-friendly outlook. But that very reputation soon began to crumble under the weight of the 2 most draining lawsuits of his career.